Hey there, it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. We all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. What do you have in your hand?
I have a pack of Lucky
Lucky
Lights
Lucky
candy in
Lights.
honor of our Breaking Bond recipient tonight, which we'll get into now. Little does she know how lucky her lights are going to be tonight. Andy Kahn, Crime Stoppers.
Introduce yourself, Emily.
Emily DeToto. I'm a criminal defense attorney for 27 years in Harris County, board certified, and mother of two amazing children and fur babies.
And you've done both. You've prosecuted and you're now a defense
Actually,
attorney.
I worked at the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which meant I was a briefing attorney and did appellate work. Then I was a DA under Johnny Holmes, and now I've had my own private practice for 21 years.
It's a real benefit, isn't it, to have an attorney that's kind of been on both sides of it, right?
Obviously, if you only know one side, you know, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Right.
But I've been on all sides, so I can see all aspects of any controversy or any complaint.
And you probably get a good idea of what the other side is thinking.
Absolutely. I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, if I was trying this case,
Right.
here's how I would do it. And so, yes, absolutely.
We want to talk about first, let's kind of refresh everybody's memory about last Tuesday's Breaking Bond. The subject of it was a gentleman by the name of Javian Major.
Yeah, by now, see, you've got his first
I'm
name
right.
down because we've done his story so many times.
I
Now
may
we
have
got-
butchered the man's name a couple of times, not gonna lie. He made headlines, was it in February or?
In January, he made headlines all over the nation.
Yes.
Fraudulently pretending he was a funeral director when he wasn't, and a mortician at best, and numerous families came forward.
Disturbing allegations came up. There were people that, he was accused of mishandling bodies.
Yep.
He was accused of,
People couldn't find their loved ones.
one poor woman had ashes that she later learned weren't even her loved ones. They belonged to somebody else. And I mean, Constable Alan Rosen, he had the press conference and he talked about it to us. And it's one of those things where he was charged with forgery,
Yes,
right?
Correct.
That's it?
Yeah. And on the surface, you think, okay, well, that's not that big of a deal, forgery. It's nonviolent. But when you look at the emotional damage,
Oh, well, he's gonna get sued up and down in civil court. So
you would think,
let's not
right?
worry about his well-being.
Not
It's
only
the
that,
criminal.
he has a bazillion prior convictions
Yes.
as well, and he had been on bond, half a dozen times, and he forfeited his bond every
Single
single
time.
time.
Wow.
And the story that we did last week, we were pointing out that at that point he was wanted.
That
Well,
point, yeah.
First, let me explain this. The bonding company went to the court and they filed this document basically saying, hey,
Surrender.
yes, they basically
Yes.
did not want to be responsible for the 10
The white
grand.
flag went out. They wanted
Yes.
nothing more to do with it.
Right. It's kind of like they saw that they were afraid they were going to be
Right,
responsible
on
for
the
the
hook, yes.
10,000. And in the document, they basically said, we don't know where he is. They saw him one time after bonding him out. After that, he basically disappeared.
Correct. So they said, we have no control over him. He won't report to us. We have no idea. Take us off this case. So it's interesting because I would say within the matter of hours, when we did the segment last week, he's back in custody.
Yeah, he gets
Amazing.
arrested.
Wow.
Basically, we were saying last Tuesday
He was
night,
wanted.
yeah, he's wanted. Well, like you pointed out, hours later, he's back in custody. Okay, so you would think he has this history of not showing up in court. You would think, okay, at least his bond
Or
is
be
going to be raised.
tripled or, yes.
Right. No, same
The
exact.
bond was 10,000.
Yeah. Again,
For destroying bodies and ashes and
this was in the 262nd, correct?
Yes.
Lloyd Chambers Gray.
Yeah.
Just basically did absolutely nothing, didn't even add $1 to the bond amount. I've been in contact with some of the victims, and it's almost heartbreaking to talk to these people. I was talking to one woman this morning, and she's like, it doesn't matter anymore. He's going to do what he wants to do. There's no bond conditions.
what?
Yeah, and it's like she just basically is like, we're done. I mean, it's the criminal justice system is just basically, they don't care about how we feel about it.
He does have a lot of bond conditions, but obviously it really doesn't mean much because
Right. Now, and I haven't vetted this yet, but this particular victim told me that he's holding funerals again.
What?
Yes. Now
That
you
should be
would,
one of the bond conditions. on there.
right? Yes.
So here's his bond condition. There's a lot of people he's not supposed, so he's not permitted to work in any capacity that involves performing funeral services. You can't post about.
I don't even understand what's happening.
So if
right now. I don't
anybody is
understand what's
aware
going on.
of him having any kind of funeral anywhere,
What kind of,
let
what's
us
going
know.
on right now? Why would anyone choose to victimize people that way?
right?
Did you get away with it?
Yeah.
Dad
Well,
can't
and- but-
speak, I get it.
But think
it's
about it
still
too, in a
horrible.
way, you're going after somebody at probably their most vulnerable time too.
Just akin to when you take any of your loved one to a hospital and they say it's gonna cost you this much money. There's no amount of dollars you won't pay
Right.
for your loved ones, and he's taking advantage of
And
people's
you,
compassion, and
you
that's
probably
horrible.
know people that have been in this situation too with their dog where
That's what I was
it's
gonna
like,
say, but I didn't
yeah.
wanna say it.
No,
That's
it's,
I don't wanna
Names on-
relate.
Look at all the names on this list. I've
Yeah.
not seen that where you cannot have contact. There must be what, a dozen plus names
Yeah.
on this that you're not, that tells you a lot.
Yeah.
A lot
He's
of
been doing
people
this for
that he-
years.
A lot of people that he
And
screwed
the shame,
over.
the sad part about this, you guys, is that these people probably knew they were taken advantage of, but they were so fearful of retaliation because he
Right.
must have been such a bully
yes.
that they were afraid to speak out.
There are victims right now that
They were
are afraid of
silenced. They
him.
were silenced.
Yes, yes,
That's a
they,
shame.
it's like, hey, he knows where we live and,
And it's such a shame. That's robbing people of their memories and dignity of their loved one. And
Right.
That's really
But
uncool.
it's classified as a nonviolent felony.
right,
Well, I mean, technically,
Yes.
he didn't kill the people,
right.
but what's violence? Harm to the emotion, harm to your, your
Right.
well-being, your trauma?
Personally, I would have more respect for somebody that came up and put a gun to my head and robbed me that way
Then
than I
stole
would some, yeah.
My family member's ashes.
And
Why-
there
why
were
do you-
people that paid for services that never even.
Right.
So
Well, this is a
why,
civil
why
matter
would a
law.
judge give him the same bond? What is your-
That's
what is
baffling to
your
me.
thought?
I have no idea why. Well, if I reverse roles for a little bit, the person is innocent until proven guilty.
Right, that's
And
true.
so we go, if we just want to go straight on the.
The bonding company's basically throwing themselves
Right.
at the
But if
mercy
you
of
want
the
to go
court,
on the
right?
degree of felony that it is,
Okay.
then that bond might, in the judge's eyes, be appropriate for what the degree of felony that it is.
Okay, but then if you take out what he's accused of doing.
Right.
And you just look at the fact that here's a defendant that 7 times has forfeited their bond in the
That's-
past.
That is something I cannot speak to or defend.
Right, I mean, wouldn't you think that that would just
should be taken into the
be,
judge account.
right?
I would have thought at the very least you would have increased it.
Of
Yeah,
course, triple that
right.
at
At the
least.
very least, it would have gone.
Right.
A lot. I'd still put
50,000,
And the saddest part of the story is that each time he was allegedly forfeiting his bond, he was doing bad deeds.
Right, yeah. And now one thing
People had
too,
to suffer.
the DA's office they filed a motion. And I don't, the last time I talked to the DA's office about it, they were looking at trying to have a hearing maybe sometime this week or something, I think. But they obviously want the bond
Oh,
raised.
too little, too late.
Right.
Where were they
But
when
if-
this was all happening?
If that happened, then, I mean, he would have to go back to court and if they raise the
The
bond,
next court date scheduled for him is in late April.
right,
So there's nothing scheduled
right.
on the
But the
horizon.
DAs can do that on
They-
their own
right,
accord. They can
yes.
file a motion
They-
to have.
Yes, and they filed a motion,
They did.
we looked at it last week.
Yeah.
But at that point, it was a motion without a hearing date.
Correct.
But that's
so
up
that's
to the
what they're waiting
judge to
on.
set a hearing. They're all micromanagers these days.
Right,
I can't reset a murder case when it's brand new and there's no discovery. They haven't spoken to the victim's next of kin. There's no autopsy report. There's no fingerprints. There's no GSRs. But I have to approach the judge to get a new trial date. Are you kidding me?
yeah.
And they don't have a new date on a bond?
It's just not, I mean, you've been in the courts for,
27 years.
yeah, I mean, you've seen it
I'm
change.
27.
27 years, man, that's a long time.
She was a prodigy.
I was a
She started
baby.
at 2.
That's
No,
longer than us.
I'm 52 years old. I've lived half my life in the Harris.
You could win
in
a lot of
Tex-
stuffed
in
animals at
Texas
carnivals.
courthouses.
She could,
I have in
right?
Texas courthouses. I've spent half of my life in Texas courthouses.
How do you compare now?
What's happening now? I've never seen anything like it.
No.
Honestly, I haven't. And I am a criminal defense attorney. I'm not gonna lie. But with that said, I'm not a true believer that everyone's innocent. I believe in the Constitution. But what I'm seeing here, I live here too.
Right.
You know, I've had so many. I was appointed to a client. I told you guys about this earlier years ago, and he bonded out, and the judge made him hire an attorney. So I was off it. He was injury to an elderly.
Yeah.
He got out and decapitated the very woman he was accused of
Oh.
assaulting, his mother.
And I think you would agree too that
I just
you're not, even the defendant, if the defendant is picking up new criminal charges,
Right.
it's not helping them.
It's
with
not
the out of
helping
bond.
the case I'm appointed to or hired
Right,
on.
right.
Let's start with that.
Yeah,
If I'm representing Jane Smith on a robbery and she goes out and picks up 7 more robberies, you know, that's not good, but also she's hurting herself
Right.
in the primary case.
it's gonna be harder for you to prove that she's innocent
When she goes and picks up
And-
new
yeah.
offenses and it's,
when she's accused of doing the same thing.
right, it's habitual behavior and the prosecutors are definitely allowed to use that. I tell all my clients when they bond out, I'm like, lay low, you know, just go to court, go to work, go to church, do what you gotta do. If you're on a GPS, go from point A to point B, don't rock the boat.
Right, yeah.
And for the most part, they do. But I will tell you, the monitors are being overused, I believe.
I do
Not-
too.
Not every case deserves an ankle monitor.
Right.
Or curfews or
And we all
whatever.
know too, there's not a bunch of people assigned to watching these people or
Right.
their monitors.
Right.
Hold
It's,
on.
right.
Oh, Andy,
Just mine.
Andy's is going off. Beep.
I mean, pretrial services is very limited in manpower. I mean, in
I
a
don't
way,
know. I don't know.
in a way, I think a lot of it is a false sense of security. Like, okay,
He's monitored.
right, so we're
It
not
looks
going to
good
have to
on
worry about it.
TV, and he has
Right.
to wear an ankle monitor or something like that.
And how many times have we seen people that,
Tamper with them and now it's a felony thanks to
Right.
Andy.
Okay, I want to switch topic because I want to ask you, because there's a lot going on right now with the HPD and the,
Oh, gosh. I'm so disappointed with that.
I
I
lost
didn't even know what
track.
to say.
How give me your perspective as a defense attorney now, where they're going back and looking at all these cases. How does that,
This is similar to when precinct 4 lost all that evidence that chunked in a dumpster and a bunch of cases got dismissed back in 2016.
Mhm.
The good news, only good thing about this is the evidence is still there, okay? So all is not lost, all hope is not lost. And the cases I was referring to before, precinct 4, the evidence was destroyed, so there was no
Nothing,
way to try
yeah.
the cases.
But it's,
Justice delayed is justice denied.
how
I
does
get
this
that.
affect cases that have statute of limitations? Does it
Well,
affect?
it depends. If they're sexual assault cases, it's 10 years after the date they turn 18. So I don't know the time statute we're talking about, the time frame we're talking about. But if we're talking about theft cases where it's 5 years or other cases.
So what about a
Right.
robbery case?
I mean, if it's over the statute 10 or some years, you're done. You're SOL.
You're done, there's
You're
nothing you.
SOL.
it's better for the defense standpoint when you have something like this,
Of
correct?
course. I mean, in the defense side, we say a reset is as good as an acquittal as long as it lasts. And that's true because witnesses move, they die, they forget.
Yeah.
Officers are transferred or evidence is lost.
There's-
And that's the saddest part about this is the people that are truly victims in all of these 250,000 cases or more.
There's a
That's not
video
justice for them.
that I saw that, I want to say it's from 2014 or
Is that the one with the
2015.
former chief, retired?
Yeah,
chief
it's got
McClellan? Yeah.
McClellan and it's got Slinker,
Yeah,
right? And they're talking about it, and at that time, it was
What do you mean they're
20,000.
talking about it?
yeah.
They're talking about this whole,
Dismissal.
Yeah,
or
classifying them.
Suspending cases.
what are
Yeah.
they calling it?
Lack of personnel.
Yeah, lack of personnel.
Oh, that's another thing we'll talk to you about in a second.
And some of them, they talk, one of the things that they talk about, which of course this would be true, that some of these cases, you would have nothing.
Right,
there would be nothing really to investigate.
right, just a report.
Right.
Right.
So they're not, it's not like there's 200, almost 250,000 actual cases.
Right,
It's
phone
reports.
calls,
Yeah. And
offense reports generated.
they sort of downplay it in a way.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
But it got worse.
Right, and that was 10 years ago.
Well, I
Right.
will tell you, just back to your question, Andy, about
Yeah.
statute of limitations, a smart lawyer might be able to do what's called tolling of the statute. So if you've begun the investigation while the statute was still in play, you can toll the statute, which means it's suspended, so you're not really losing out on the time. It's kind of like if you're playing a Monopoly and you go pause and you never pick the game up for 5 years and you pick up exactly
And
where
you just
you
start right
were.
where you are. Yeah.
That's similar to tolling of the statute. So a smart attorney might be able to say, well, we began this here, so the statute should be tolled because the investigation was already ongoing. So they might not miss out on their chance to get justice.
That's interesting. But the thing that I still, and Mayor Whitmire brought this up last week when he had the press conference. How did it go on for so long?
I know, that's the thing. We're
In this
Where was
day and
everybody?
age of leaks and
Right,
everything.
And the day is-
under four different police
Jeez.
chiefs. And
that's a
like-
conspiracy.
and
That
he-
reminds me of Baltimore.
He pointed out too that, and you would have thought that like maybe someone from the union or,
Right.
somebody somewhere would have said, hey, take a look at
Someone
this.
who retired.
No one can keep a
Right.
secret this long. Between the three of us, we can't keep a secret.
Right,
We're talking about hundreds of people.
yeah. But it's really going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out. Don't you
This is
think?
going to be decades and decades.
Right.
It
This
is going, and it's devastating.
Right. And well,
I mean,
and I think there's already been reported instances where in a sexual assault case, the suspect then, that was not investigated at the time, went on
raping
to,
someone else.
yes.
Often that, and in
And
that
that's the-
particular case, they provided all the information.
But that's
Yeah.
the saving grace, sadly, is that when cases go cold, Andy, you know this better than I do. The saving grace is they go on to assault someone else only to solve the previous case. So someone else has to suffer
Right,
for the original victim to get justice.
yeah.
And
And
that's shameful.
you know how it is too. I mean, I always look at these, well, this is when you got caught. How many times did you do
And
this?
get away with it.
Right, before you got caught?
Well, I'm not even
So
started.
at the Parents of Murdered Children meeting last Tuesday, we were discussing it because there's families that have unsolved cases and a lot of them were 2017 through 2019.
Yes,
And, when they were
the golden
saying,
age of.
and they were kind of saying, how do we know our case, wasn't one of these cases that they just
You'd have to
simply-
wonder.
And I
They
don't
should
blame
give them notice.
Right.
I don't blame them at
Yeah.
all for wondering that.
Wait a minute, are they not giving notice out to victims?
I know that they're contacting, I think, sexual assault victims.
Yeah, but we don't know specifically the types of offenses.
Right.
Why don't we know that?
Well, I think right now, that's where they
A
are
reporter
now.
Like you hadn't asked.
Right.
I actually asked to be on the committee to review, because they need at least a criminal defense attorney.
I think you're right, yes, yes.
I
But
know
I
that
think
they-
that's kind of where what they're starting out with.
Right.
Is, okay, let's look and see how many of these
Right.
would actually be cases and how many of these are just,
Complaints, but
yeah.
how do you know that? That's so unfair, Randy. What I'm telling you is, if I called the police and no one followed through, how in the world are you now, years later, gonna know whether I was meritorious in my claim or not?
you wouldn't.
So how is that justice?
Right. It's not. It's not. I mean, yeah, there are people
That's
that,
stupid.
Have you ever heard of this anywhere else?
no,
Never,
Seriously?
never.
no.
And I get
I
asked
was
that.
shocked and appalled and
Right.
embarrassed.
And the crazy thing is too, okay, this is all based on a lack of personnel, but yet
They're hiring
there's
new
enough
cadets all the
personnel to
time.
take, like you said, this is going to go on for
Yeah,
years.
there's no easy fix.
There's
You
no
can't
end.
wave a magic wand. I mean, nothing, whether it's tomorrow, 10 years, 20 years, the reverberations, it's kind of like an earthquake.
Yes.
Yeah.
The actual quake itself doesn't do all it, it's the
Right.
reverberation.
But you know, the
after.
one thing that makes sense to me in it is, we were doing all this breaking bond stuff and seeing all these crimes, and
No
yet,
one said a peep.
or it's crimes down, crimes down, crimes down.
Oh, because.
How can that be? Well,
Oh,
yeah,
we
when
know
there's
that can
like
be.
a quarter of a
The tail's
million.
wagging the dog. We know exactly how
Yeah.
that happens.
I mean, come on.
It throws
that-
all the statistics.
all of it, all of it.
Yes.
I mean,
And
it's like, you can't even really call it an educated guess anymore.
No.
Well, for the people that have truly been victimized, I mean, and sure, there's some fake callers out there. Let's
Right.
not get it twisted.
Right,
But that's probably a 1%.
right. I agree with you there,
And the
yes.
fact that all these hundreds of thousands of people have gone without justice all this time,
And you look at.
There's no
you-
coming back
You
from
look
this.
at that crime as far as sexual assault, look at how many people don't report it because they
Right.
think, well, nobody's going to believe
you're
me.
so right, Randy. This will cause a chilling effect on people, on true victims from calling the police because they know to
They are
quote
Crackerjack
my favorite
producer.
band,
I can
911 is a
read
joke.
signals.
What?
He's doing this, which
No.
for those at
Why
home.
call the police? Why
with
call
that
the
sig-
police?
So
And
what are
he
we
was
doing?
wagging
what
his
are-
finger.
What are we doing tonight? So tonight, this is a special.
Very, very
This is
special.
really good.
Very special breaking bond tonight. We have a record holder. And it's her
Guinness Book.
birthday.
And what makes it even better, it's her birthday today, and she has no idea that we're going to celebrate her birthday in a birthday fashion you wouldn't expect.
Tell us, what was your reaction when he first told you
Well,
about
when
it?
I see that a person has been on deferred adjudication for robbery and then given bonds for
Don't
almost.
say the amount. 'cause we can- don't.
I'm not gonna give it away.
Geez, a lot.
All these record number of bonds and was given bond after bond after bond after bond, including in not this county, but Galveston and other counties, Brazos.
It's crazy. And the way that,
The system is broken down, folks.
right, and the way that it ends will make you mad. So be sure to tune in to tonight's Breaking Bond on Fox 26 News at 9. Hey, thank you all so much for watching, and be kind to yourself and
And your
everyone else.
pets.
And
Just
your
about the
pets.
records
And your
tonight.
puppies.